righty. So welcome everyone here today. My name is Colin Flintoft. I'm your president of our Bruin Sports Business Association. We hope you've all been having a great week 6. We got a very, very special guest today. Our very own co-founder and former president. We wouldn't have a club without her, Christina Chenault. Thank you for joining tonight, Christina.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. So excited to be here.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're very, very pumped about it. Without further ado, though, before we kind of dive into the bulk of the guest speaker meeting and all that, we want to give a quick shout out to all of our case competition participants. We really appreciate you guys joining. We want to give a special shout out to the winners, Alicia Dar, Alex Guo, and Jackson Tam, and also our runner-ups, Arnav Saxena and Arnav Talupter. As you guys can see there, we really appreciate it. And for our winners, it's very cool. Their team wins $200 and they all got spots on our private tour of SoFi Stadium in a couple weeks. So we definitely encourage all of you in the future to try and participate again. And there will be some similar cool prizes like that. Stuff we're very excited about. And then also, unless maybe you've been living under a rock, we just got to give a quick shout out to the home team. Congrats to LA Rams on winning Super Bowl 56. That was a pretty sweet game to get to watch. And hopefully all of us are maybe, sitting in box seats there over for the next Super Bowls or something like that. That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, looking at what our meeting tonight's going to look like, our agenda kind of looks like I'm going to be introducing a little bit about Christina real quick, and then she's going to share a little bit about her path to success. And then I'll lead a little bit of a discussion featuring our executive board. And then towards the end of the meeting, we'll do about 15 minutes or so of open audience question and answer with Christina herself. I'll moderate it during that time, and we just ask that you guys please use the raise hand function to ask your questions live, or feel free at any time throughout the meeting just to throw some questions into the chat. Then we'll say goodbye to Christina. She's actually got to hop on a plane after this, so we're very lucky to get to have her tonight. And then we'll go over our next play and some announcements. So who is Christina? Currently, she's serving as a consumer direct marketing specialist at Nike. She's also a UCLA alum, where she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. And she's a double Bruin. She got a Master of Education in Educational Leadership and Administration. Some of her other experiences include being a captain of our track and field team here. I believe it was being a heptathlete and kind of doing everything, So you name something on the track, odds are Christina's able to do it. She was also, as I mentioned earlier, co-founder and president of our very own group, the Bruin Sports Business Association. She was also co-founder of Top 5 Media, which is really cool as well. I highly recommend you guys go check that out. She also served as a sales and marketing graduate intern at the Center for Scholars and Storytellers, a global digital brand marketing intern at Nike, and also a global sports marketing intern at Under Armour. So, wow, that is quite a lot of cool experiences right there that you guys kind of just got to get a taste of. I guess with all that in mind, Christina, would you mind maybe sharing a little more about yourself, kind of what you're up to today and how you got to this point?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to see all of you guys today, and maybe to have actually met probably some of you guys in the past. I hope you guys are all doing well and are safe. Colin, that was a great introduction. Thanks for giving all the context and backgrounds. I did just finish or graduated from UCLA last year, finished grad school at least, and had finished my undergrad in 2019, 2020-ish, around COVID. It all kind of blurs together. But regardless, had been at UCLA the past 6 years. So totally we're in your guys' shoes. Yeah, and during this whole conversation, feel free to ask me any questions. If anything comes to mind after, you guys can always reach out to me individually, connect with me on LinkedIn, etc. Happy to try to help out as much as I can. Just because I was directly in your guys' shoes. I guess to give you guys a little bit more context about myself, grew up in the sports world. Me and I had an older sister, she's 2 years older than me, was a swimmer at USC. So we had a little family rivalry, but just our entire childhood, I think sports was like a big part of our lives. We did a bunch of sports every single season. And the biggest thing I think my parents passed down to us was like figure out a way to use sports and not have the sports world use you as it can easily do. And so we kind of took that mantra as like, what can sports provide for us? What can sports provide for us in every opportunity, as well as like having just like fun within the sport. And took that mindset to UCLA, knowing that being a college athlete can be like that gateway to a higher education. And all of you guys being UCLA students, I assume, you guys are already in like a great position. So kudos to you. But yeah, I think that was like a big mindset for me and my sister, was like, hey, how can we use sports to get even a better education? And that unknowingly turned into me getting a graduate degree as well, because COVID actually hit during my like senior season on the track and field team. And because of that, I was pretty devastated. I was like, oh shoot, I guess I'm going into the real world like now. And as some of you guys may have known, then the NCAA ended up giving us an extra year of eligibility. Still wasn't sure at first if I was going to take it, because honestly, I was like, I've already just did my 5th year. Am I coming back for a 6th year? Like, how does this work? Stressed, I think, as a lot of people may have been, regardless of your situation during COVID, and then ended up applying to grad school, got in, and just things ended up working out as they always do. And not necessarily how I thought it would work out, but worked out, I think, in the better for sure. So that led me into grad school last year. As Colin mentioned, I did my undergrad in psychology. I think it's important to know, like, major is, it's definitely important to try to align it with your interests. It's not the end all be all. As Colin has also mentioned, I'm now in marketing at Nike, so didn't need a marketing undergrad, or near, I guess we don't even have a marketing undergrad regardless, but just want to emphasize, like, don't stress if you're undeclared, or if you're in a major and you want to do something else, don't even stress. Did psychology, absolutely loved it. And then in my grad degree was in the sports leadership and education program. And so also super versatile, definitely recommend. I think anyone that wants to be a leader in sports, or wants to be a coach or work in administration, it's great just for connecting with other people and leaders. So that actually ended up going really well. And yeah, now I am working at Nike. We are still working remotely. I have Nike as my virtual background. This is like the world headquarters campus. I moved directly after like our graduation, our virtual graduation in 2021. I moved directly from my LA grad apartments off of Weyburn to Portland, Oregon. So now I'm a Portland, like, not native, but like, I guess, like, live there now, which is super interesting, way different than LA. Maybe some of you guys have been there, but that's been an adjustment. And then, yeah, working at Nike has been a dream. It's definitely been a dream job for me. It was something I really, really wanted. I'd interned, and I can go into a little bit more about that later, but was really happy that the opportunities just aligned, was able to get that. And I think the additional year that I got definitely helped me network a little bit more, and helped me get into the position to like have that transition that I think is like rare, to go from like a college setting and then immediately into kind of like a dream entry level job. But it's been amazing. We've been remote the entire time, so meeting people has been a little bit hard, but we actually just got an announcement. I think I can say this, but we just got an announcement saying we're coming back in the next couple months, I think in April or May. So hopefully, you know, there's not like another wave or something. But really excited to come back and be in person and like work with people at the headquarters, because, you know, that's why I moved out to Oregon. So yeah, that's a little context, and I'll kind of leave it there for now.
Yeah, I like it. Thanks for sharing all that. I really appreciate it. A couple things immediately just stuck out to me, which was, I really like that quote, especially that your parents kind of taught you, which was, how can you use sports as opposed to letting them use you? And I feel like you starting this group is really a perfect example of that, and being able to use it to your advantage and things like that. And I also like touching upon, you know, how major isn't exactly super important unless maybe you want to become like a doctor or an engineer, which I don't know if anyone in here is trying to become one of those, considering we're in this meeting. But I guess my first question would just be, considering like the background you got right there, you're excited to return to work in a couple months, maybe in some of the time you spent on campus, albeit maybe limited, what would you say is your favorite part about like Nike campus and HQ?
Yeah, it's just like so exciting. In the same way you think of like the lore of like even some of the cool like UCLA buildings. I think UCLA's college campus is like one of the prettiest college campuses. It's literally like that, but bigger. So at Nike, like, I mean, I interned in 2019. So that's when I was going in person more regularly over that 3-month summer internship span. Since then, they've opened up campus. So I've worked just a few times, but just because it's like gorgeous and it's only 15-minute drive for me. But haven't gotten that like continuous, obviously, like routine yet. They have built 2 huge buildings since 2019 when I actually interned, one of them being the LeBron James building, one of them being the Serena Williams building. They're massive. They have like cafes in them. The aesthetic is cute. The buildings are black, or a lot of them are just super modern. They have like waterfalls. There's like a trail around it. They have like a mini forest. It's just like, it's a lot. And I think it's a super fun place, especially to intern, because there's like less expectations when you're interning than being in a full-time role. But yeah, it's its own little, like, I feel like athlete meaning like, you know, not just like traditional athlete, but anyone who just like likes sports. It's like an athlete playground. So definitely would say check it out if you can, if you're ever in the area. But yeah, it brings a lot of energy. I try to go into work sometimes, even if we're working remotely, just because it has that like wow factor.
Awesome. If you don't mind me asking, I assume, does Nike kind of have some fitness benefits as well, if you work for them?
Yeah, I mean, Nike's like mantra is make sport a daily habit. So they obviously would have to try to recommend that for employees too. And so we have like 3 different gyms on campus that we have. If you're a full-time employee, you get free gym membership, which is super clutch. One of the new gyms is the Coach K gym. If anyone, you know, is like an athlete or college athlete on this call, they have like all the stuff we also have in like Acosta. So they have like even like the Normatex and just like things that like, I don't know, it's that like elite athletes use, like everyday people have access to them if you're an employee. So that's like super, super nice. But yeah, I should definitely use the gyms more. I feel like I've been relaxing too much since I graduated and finished sports.
Hey, that makes 2 of us. Don't worry about it. That sounds really cool though. That top level athlete stuff and some of those benefits they're providing. I kind of want to maybe take a trip down memory lane real quick and just kind of ask you maybe what were some of your favorite memories from your time at UCLA?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was here or there for so long. I think some of my favorite memories would be, I mean, being a college athlete, that definitely added a lot. It was like the people that I met across the board. So since I was there for 6 years, I had so many different teammates. And so definitely miss that, you know, once like you graduate, you don't have like that immediate sense of community. So really miss a lot of my teammates, but like try to follow along. I think I saw like Mackenzie is on this call. So hi, Mackenzie. But yeah, I try to follow along. So I miss my teammates. I think some other of like the best moments were obviously creating, like helping create BSBA. So little things like this, once again, the people, so seeing a lot of like the e-board members and all these people that I've met and know. So like really cool seeing you all here. And I don't know, UCLA has like really cool random traditions. So I think those are fun. Like you never get to do like the midnight yell or just like random stuff like that. So it's not necessarily like these big moments, but it's these things that are like such like in the college niche that you're like, yeah, this would only happen around college. Or like this whole thing, like everyone just walking around at this day party, like that's only a college thing or only accepted in the college atmosphere. So not always like these crazy big moments, but I think I just miss the like casualty of like college. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, getting into the real world maybe is a little less casual. And I guess I'm
Yeah.
curious as well, like kind of, can you describe to us maybe what your day-to-day is kind of looking like now?
Yeah. And Nike marketing, it's definitely super different. It's still 9 to 5, still corporate, but every day is a little bit different. A cool thing. So when he kind of described, or Colin, when you described my job title as like consumer direct marketing North America, there's like so many subsections to it. I'm on like the women's cohort team. Essentially the stuff that I work on is anything you guys see on like the app, on the Nike app, on Nike.com, on anything you guys get through like emails, that like touches a lot of like the women's work, or I'm on like a fleece campaign. That type of stuff like I'm involved in. And so it's kind of cool because every day looks different. We set up a lot of meetings throughout the day. I set up meetings with like my channel partners. So everyone that like runs all of those platforms that I just said. And then I also have to meet with like our merchandising partners, because obviously we can't have a store if we don't have like the product. COVID has caused a lot of inventory issues, I think, for like every company. And so that's something we're always touching base on, like, hey, like what products are actually going to be available in March or April or whatever. And making sure, we have this like product relevant story relating to maybe like a consumer theme, relating to just something that would make it more relevant, make it more interesting. And then to like storytell around that and these moments throughout the year. So that's a little bit of a sum of like what I do. The day-to-day is definitely different. It's meetings all the time, a lot. And especially since we're remote, it's like Zoom all the time. I think I need to get like blue light glasses. But yeah, meeting with a lot of different people. We have team meetings too throughout the weeks, are recurring every week. And then I'm thinking of like who else my partners are. Merch from a business side, channel partners for like execution, creative. Sometimes we work with agencies, sometimes we work with our internal creative team. So those will be calls. We do lots of like reviews. So like I might help create this like idea for the season and then give it to the channel teams, give it to the creative teams, see if they have any call outs on like things I need to work on or like improve within the like brief or the deck that I share with them, make those edits, like bring it back to the team. Then we start executing it. And then once everything gets like mocked up as like, this is how it's going to look in 2 weeks when it goes live, they'll show it back to me and like my brand team. And then we'll take a look and say like, hey, actually, like, we don't like the way that like looks, or we don't like the way that reads, or just like small little call outs is something that I didn't realize was like part of my day to day, is like having an opinion and a point of view of what looks good, what doesn't look good, and like having an intention with that. So then we'll have like these review processes as well. So that's kind of a little bit of the scope, but every day looks a little bit different.
Yeah, right. Always some sort of surprise or something, or putting out some sort of a fire or whatever, I could assume. I'm kind of curious, within your marketing department and stuff, what kind of role would you say like focus groups, surveys, and like consumer feedback play?
Yeah, it's pretty huge. We're in this like super analytical section of marketing right now, where everything, just like over the past 2 years, Nike went through this entire reorg called consumer direct acceleration. It's the reason why I'm on the consumer direct marketing team. Everything being like knowing that marketing is digital marketing, knowing that we can reach a lot of our consumers through like digital platforms, social media, whatever the case may be, and being relevant to like Gen Z consumers, millennials consumers, like just like a younger audience, knowing that that's where they live. Analytics are huge. It gives us the opportunity, because a lot of things are digital, to test and learn so much. We do a lot of A/B tests, like just to see like, hey, which creative looks a little bit better. It can be as specific as like, it's the exact same image, but one has a red background and one has like, I don't know, a blue background.
Oh,
And they're
wow.
able to track like which one gets more like clicks, or if it's a wavy text versus this or whatever. So they're super, super specific on the things that they test, that you guys probably don't even realize. And so I think that's something that's really, really cool. It's something that like definitely develops their analytical skills and kind of like creative skills and being in the role that I'm in. So yeah, lots of tests all the time, lots of opportunities to test. Every campaign we run, we think about like some sort of learning agenda, or like, hey, like what's the intention of this? What's something we can maybe learn from it? What are some KPIs that can measure it? And then at the end of the season, we see like how it performed and like, did this work? Did this not work? Can we repeat this because it worked? Should we get rid of this because it didn't work, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at kind of our next question, I'm a little curious how you came upon the role, how you found it, and maybe what attracted you to it specifically, as opposed to some of the other opportunities you were considering.
Yeah. So how I found the role, I'm sure it was probably in my like hectic LinkedIn search, job searching. As some of you guys probably know, internship searching is just super tough. Like it's tough regardless of what your experience is. It's just tough. And so you would think like, oh, I interned, like maybe there's like an easier way in. It was still just, honestly, I feel like I was just like in this like soup of everybody. So I was applying to a lot. Like my tactic was always like apply, try to reach out to someone who maybe is like the hiring manager, or maybe someone that's like that posted about it, that works in HR, like see if I can find any, loopholes. I feel like you guys are all pretty young. You guys know how you can find loopholes in the same way you'd find them like on Instagram or something. But I would try to do stuff like that. reach out to more people saying like, hey, I applied to this role. Do you know what team or like anyone can you connect me with, or can I get on a call? Like I would just do a lot of that. And I did that for like so many roles, I think at Nike specifically and outside. The chaotic thing at the time, because I was applying, I started applying, I think in January, and then I realized I'm applying way too early. I don't finish until June. It's kind of like company by company. I think that changes, role by role, I think, or function by function. That also changes. Marketing within Nike is always kind of like, once they make a post, they would probably try to hire someone, I would assume within like 3 months. So I didn't end up getting the first couple roles that I applied for. But the role that I did end up getting, I think, was in that sweet spot because I was interviewing in like March and April, wasn't graduating till June. So it was kind of like the right time period for me. So I had to be super, super patient, I think, throughout my like senior or like final graduate year. And then, yeah, I think just one like stuck. I ended up getting reach out from the HR person that was on that role. I also was interviewing for a different Nike role as well. It was like a program that I really wanted to get into. And then just started rounds of interviews, went through like 6 hours of interviews, didn't get the first role that I thought I really wanted or really was trying to get. But because I at least performed pretty well on that interview series, it's something like there's always kind of a silver lining. Is like, even if you don't get the role that you applied for or whatever, it's still a great opportunity to leave an impression. And so I guess I left a positive impression. That team was also still hiring for a different role. So then I became like a preferred candidate for a different role. And that is what then helped me get the role that I was in today. So really happy that lined up. And I think, yeah, the thing that drove me to this role specifically was, and I spoke about it a little bit, but my team is very in between the analytical science side of things and then the art and creative side. I really like that, just coming from a psych background and being, I guess, a little bit more in the science of like testing, learning, creating, and but then also being like a creative and having my creative outlets in college, like the media platform and things like that. It was like the perfect in between for me. So that's kind of what ended drawing me to this role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that synthesis of like creative and analytics certainly sounds really intriguing. I also like that idea too of reaching out to recruiters, finding loopholes. That's always something. Whenever people ask some of us on the board, what should you do? We recommend that, and I remember learning it from you. So I just gotta say thank you for that, helping me out. Really appreciate that. And it also sounds too like, I know you kind of mentioned maybe you applied a little early. The first thought that came to my mind was, is there such thing as applying too early though? Because maybe as you did, you kind of maybe find your internal champion, like someone who's really all for you and wants to help you, who's on the inside. Even if you didn't get that gig, as it clearly happened with you, they can help you out down the line and things like that. I was kind of curious, maybe you could speak to that too, of how, there's no such thing as like pointless interviews or something like that. Like you never know what connection could lead to something.
Yeah, no, that's super true. Because when I was looking at other companies, I know one of the ones I was interviewing for was Visa in the Bay Area. I was looking at like this Verizon ad program, just like a few others. And I was interviewing for them way earlier than Nike, like in the fall and the winter. And those didn't end up working out. But to your point, I think there's no such thing really as interviewing too early in regards to like, you could always get value out of the interview series. You never really want the job that you really, really want to be like the first interview you had in a while. So just because like, I know when I go on interviews, I was like writing down a bunch of notes, like what was the recruiter asking me? Because you gotta forget, especially if you go through multiple rounds, but all of those things are super, super helpful. I saw a lot of like themes of like what they were asking me specifically at Nike, no matter who it was interviewing me. So I'm glad like I had like notes. But yeah, I think just like interview prep is always good. And like, you can kind of like mock it up in probably the career center or something like that at UCLA, which is super helpful. But like, there's nothing like the actual interview process. And yeah, getting those reps are super, super important. So no such thing as necessarily too early. It's just sometimes, on the back end for a specific role, they might be like, we want to hire someone now, unless you're willing to be able to do it, because you can maybe work remotely and be a student, but that's kind of tough. So wouldn't necessarily rush you there, wouldn't rush you to say like you have to have a job right after you graduate. Like that's not also the case. Like you have time, you have the summer to, like people's jobs don't line up immediately after graduation. So don't feel like you have to be on that timeline either.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally normal. I'm kind of curious, like Nike versus Under Armour, what would you say like were some of the biggest differences in your experiences working at both?
Yeah, I feel like the hot take is just to keep it real is like the budget. I feel like when I was at Under Armour, we didn't have as much budget to work with, which kind of makes sense. In marketing specifically, that like matters because the stuff that you're able to like execute at a much larger scale was able to come to life at Nike when I interned. So when I compare those two, that's like the first thing that jumps out. But I will say they were both amazing internship programs, like really, really good. Both set up very similarly. Both you're like there in person, just one being Baltimore, one being Portland, with a bunch of other interns, great programs. They had speaker series. I know like kind of end up inspiring like this creation actually of BSBA. And yeah, I think both of them have like amazing perks for sure. Biggest difference I think was budget. And when I was at Under Armour, I was doing a sports marketing role, so working closer with athletes. And now at Nike, I'm in a brand marketing role. And if you don't really know the difference there, sports marketing works directly with like athlete relationships. Brand marketing works more so on like what are the brand priorities, business priorities, like products that needs to be pushed so that Nike hits their bottom line and hits these numbers of sales every year. So I'm kind of more on like the brand side of things rather than like athlete relationships. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like they both ran pretty good operations over there, but no doubt it's probably certainly nice to work with a little more runway in terms of budget and things like that over at a place like Nike. So that's cool to hear. We appreciate that insight. I'm kind of curious, thinking back a little to your time while at UCLA, maybe if you could explain to us some of the biggest benefits of kind of participating in student clubs, internships, and other various professional development opportunities that come up while you're an undergrad here.
Yeah. As you guys have probably seen, even just based on my experiences, like all of it was kind of linked to like what was available or how I positioned myself based on what was available to me at UCLA. So just knowing that you guys all have so many resources on campus and really looking into them, digging into them, one of them being BSBA here, are all super, super valuable for just like setting yourself up for success post-grad. When you look at my experiences, like interning at Under Armour, interning at Nike, interning at the Center for Scholars and Storytellers, those were all directly tied to being a UCLA student. Not even just being a UCLA student athlete, just being a UCLA student. Because at the time, UCLA was sponsored by Under Armour. So I kind of made that connection, and that's how I positioned myself, knowing that we were testing out a lot of Under Armour spikes because they were just creating a new line of track spikes. So I was reaching out to people saying like, hey, I have this perspective on, being a heptathlete. I'm testing out all these models of spikes. I think this is where areas that they can improve. And so I think realizing that you guys, in your guys' perspective, has value and kind of seeing maybe where you can add value is also something to keep in mind. Then when I went to Nike or interned at Nike, it was kind of an easier pivot because I had that Under Armour experience, but like now UCLA is sponsored by Nike. So it's kind of interesting to see that tie. And then lastly, and even just being in the athlete world, I guess that was something that I was able to position myself for like why I could be a good candidate. And make it like, make sense. And then lastly, with the Center for Scholars and Storytellers, that was one of my former psych professors at UCLA. And it was Dr. Yalda Ols, and she still has that center. And so it's a great opportunity if any of you guys are like maybe psych majors or anything like that, or interested in media, kids media, great connections there, great experience, met a lot of friends who I still have today through that grad program. And that was once again run a lot by student interns at UCLA. So there's always kind of areas where you can create value for yourself and use UCLA's network to help you fuel your passions or find out what your passions are. It's all like kind of right there. You just have to maybe reach out, ask yourself some questions but you guys have a lot at your hands. So don't forget that.
Yeah, I had no idea that you got an internship from a former professor. Like that's incredible. I always love hearing about little connections like that and how they came together. I guess kind of maybe putting yourself back in your undergrad shoes again, like what would you say to those who maybe like I was when I was a freshman? You're a little anxious about getting involved in so many of these activities on campus, like clubs or even just networking with strangers, especially ones who are like 10, 15 years your senior. What would you say to us who think like we also don't have enough time to do that and are just a little apprehensive about all of it?
Yeah. The first thing is like there's always time. Like there you might feel like you don't have time, but like you do. Like it just depends on how you prioritize. And by no means do I feel like, oh my gosh, make your whole life about like networking. Like you guys are in college, still have fun and like reap all of those benefits too. Cause like once you go into the professional world, you're right, it is kind of, it's not like boring, but it's just not as like fun. I feel like in some ways it is, I guess, fun. And there's like some financial freedom. But I think advice I would give myself, like younger self, anxious self, because I think we all feel those feelings, is like don't feel shy. Sometimes you just need that like just push to show up to like your first meeting, or even if it's like, even if you're not always engaged or not engaging, but if you're not always, in the chat or something, like you can still add value until you feel comfortable, and then then push yourself to the next level to like maybe ask more questions in the chat or like do something. And so I think it's just like there's like levels to it and you can take it at like your own pace. It's definitely not a thing where you have to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to show up to this meeting or introduce myself to this person and then be this like all-star. Like just take it at your own pace, small steps. I think definitely like win the race. But yeah, networking is super huge. And you don't want to look back at your experience after graduating from UCLA and be like, wow, I had access to all of these things, I just didn't use it. So yeah, you guys are students, you guys, like a lot of people want to help you guys. And just I would encourage always take like that little leap of faith and hope. And it can be something super small, like just joining up for one thing or one club at a time. And then you can prioritize like, hey, how can I fit this in? Because yeah, like networking does really matter when it comes to the long game of things, and professional development does matter once you are done taking all your classes. It's like you have to get a job. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't know, have you ever heard the old acronym about like how fail? I think actually Martin Jarman told it to us a year ago when you hosted that awesome meeting, where he said fail kind of stands for first attempt in learning. Like, don't be afraid of just going out there and like maybe having a bit of an awkward conversation or something like that, because at least you're going to learn from it and be able to grow from it and things like that. So that's something I guess I would just piggyback and add on to that. And I know you did a good job of teaching, the rest of us who were younger members at the time, kind of how to just go out there and go for it. Thinking a little bit, kind of staying in that zone a little bit. Can you kind of walk through for some of our younger members, especially how BSBA kind of came to life?
Yeah, I like almost kind of mentioned it, but so essentially I mentioned how I interned at Under Armour. And I guess like one other thing to say there is like even sometimes when deadlines, you should try to hit intern deadlines, but I missed the internship deadline. I was like not thinking about professional development, and then it was like March or something, and I was like, wait. So I ended up reaching out to people and I ended up still getting it. So even if something it says like formally like deadline is then or like whatever, and maybe you just missed it but really want it, still go after it. So that's the first thing I'm gonna say. But when I did end up getting the Under Armour internship, there was another UCLA student named Amal who also was an Under Armour intern. I met him in Baltimore at their internship, realized he was just another UCLA student. So I was like, okay, instant connection, at least there. And we were talking about how Under Armour did the speaker series with the internship program and thought it was super valuable. We were meeting with like VPs and just different executives. And even if it was for 30 minutes or an hour, all the interns in this one executive or panel, and it was super helpful. And I was like, this is the information that I wish we could, give and disperse through UCLA's community. And I kind of like said that as an afterthought and next to a mall. And he kind of said like, why don't we create something like this? Like, why don't we create some sort of speaker event or some sort of club or something? And I was like, I guess we could like, and this is why I say like, don't hold back to like your ideas in college. You can literally create as much as you want. And there's almost no risk to it if you're not putting like all your money behind it, but like there's almost no risk to it. And that's even the reason why I created like a media platform. Like you guys can create those experiences. If you don't feel like you have an internship experience that you want, you can almost create it for yourself. So we ended up taking that idea, figured out how to create a club on UCLA's campus. set everything up, and then yeah, and then just started like learning. And every year I think it got a little bit better. We started organizing how we wanted this to look, how we wanted to come into fruition, what could field trips be like, And so knowing that UCLA specifically didn't have the marketing major that I wanted, knowing that they didn't have like a sports heavy related major, but I was like, this is something that students should have access to. We live in LA, it's a sports entertainment capital of the world. We have access to so many professionals. UCLA's alumni base is huge and super helpful. So how can we create something that can help more people and help ourselves too? So that's eventually how it came into fruition. Literally me in conversation with my friend Amal. And then I kind of shared it with like two of my other track teammates, and they're like, yeah, let's just do it. And it started, it was like 6 of us. Maybe our first meeting, there might have been like us 3, the people that I just mentioned, and then like 2 other people showed up. We're like, oh gosh. But then we had like Karan Butler come that week, or like, so it was really cool seeing like some of the speakers that were willing to hop on calls with students. So yeah, it's been like a nice fun ride, and it's cool to see it, still thriving, and seeing all of you guys, get some benefit from it.
Yeah, I think I can safely speak for everyone on the call and who's been a part of BSBA, but like we're sincerely grateful for it. And I remember those first few meetings. Those were really cool, just seeing how it all got started and things like that. I want to say, Dindy, I see your question. I'm going to ask that next. Just one further thing about kind of your experience with BSBA. What would you say like you learned the most from that experience, and maybe how has that helped you professionally?
Yeah, I think there's 2. One, everyone always says like networking is super important. It really is. Um, and I think that's something like a club like BSBA can really provide for you, if you don't like know exactly how to reach out to people or whatever, like BSBA brings those types of people to you, which is like great. So that's something instantly of value, because it's almost less about the people that it's more about, in the professional world, the people that know you and that know what your passions are, because they can maybe help place you, maybe either give advice, something as simple as that goes a long way, or they might eventually be able to connect you into a role or an internship or an experience that opens up that then, because you share what you're passionate about, they might think of you. So definitely the benefit of networking paid off as well. And it's like BSBA having these like weekly or, super frequent meetings is something that helps just within the repetitions of all of that. That's probably a huge takeaway. Getting involved. So like from a leadership standpoint, getting involved in the e-board, that's like the perfect gateway or transferable experience into like the professional world. Sometimes I used to think like, oh, is something I could speak on a club, like, is that like good enough for Nike? And yeah, I was able to speak into even my full-time roles. Like I thought, sometimes I would shy away from like it being a club and not like a huge company or something like that. And they wanted to know about it, like whether it be something like on social media or whatever aspect of even the e-board you get involved with, like think about the transferable skills that you now are able to speak on. And, I feel like recruiters know college students can only have so much, experience. You guys are students, but like, if you can have those transferable skills that are not just like I studied and did really well, then that's always just like such a good benefit too. So e-board involvement was huge.
Yeah, most definitely. And I feel like, at least on a personal level, and I think it was probably similar for your experience based on what you've shared with me in the past about how kind of acting in those leadership type roles and being a part of executive board and things like that. It also kind of just teaches you what it's like to be a part of a team with very diverse backgrounds, skill sets, and everything. And that's something that when you speak on, I feel like recruiters just eat it up, and you're like guaranteed to probably go to the next round or something like that. And I know on a personal level, it's been very helpful in interviews to talk about my experiences with our Bruin Sports Business Group. So I guess with all that in mind, I'll go to Dindy's question right here. And by all means, guys, this is that open audience Q&A part. So I like some of the stuff we're seeing in the chat. Dindy's curious, do you think your psychology knowledge helped you in your marketing job?
Yeah, absolutely huge advocate for psychology majors, just because I think it's a good personal skill set to have. But to your question, Dindy, yes, I do think my background in psychology, not necessarily like the specific information I might have like remembered from like one class or the other, I do think it helped me develop the like analytical skill set. So like when we do tests, when we do look at like even just like data charts and things like that, like just having the experience by being in these psych classes that were more like data or stats driven was super helpful. I know where it actually came of almost more of an advantage of being a psychology major than being a marketing major was when I actually interned. I know my internship project was about like a podcast or creating a podcast. It was a whole idea. And I threw in a term that I learned in psychology called semantic awareness, and was just talking about how like we could shift this idea of what the like female consumer looks like for Nike by shifting the semantic awareness. And like if something so small, it's not like anything that's really crazy impressive for people that might be like psych majors, but since that was something that was like so new to I think a lot of the people being maybe econ or marketing majors, and that's like great too. But I think since it was so fresh and just like different, just literally slightly different, that came of huge value. And I know like my internship manager was like, oh my gosh, you have to speak to that a little bit more when you're pitching this to our executives, because they just thought it was really interesting. So that's, I think, an example of like where it actually came of like even more value. But yeah, I'll just leave that there.
That's quite the term right there. I'm gonna have to look that up after this. That's really cool. I see Anthony's got a question here. Are there any classes that you think gave you really practical day-to-day skills that you still use?
That's such a good question. I remember, I feel like I only remember like my last year or two at UCLA, but I feel like so many people go into the professional world and they're like, I have no idea what I retained from college. But I do remember I was able in my grad, they have this really cool like opportunity within it saying like, hey, you have, you know, the same way in undergrad, you have your key courses, but then you also can have others. And they allowed me, although this my grad program was in the education school, to take like an extracurricular class in the business school. So it's kind of like a hack to like a mini MBA, but was able to take an MBA course on marketing and digital marketing. So since I wasn't a marketing major and that wasn't offered in undergrad, that was a super practical class for me to take. And I remember we were even analyzing and having discussions about the Super Bowl ads of last year. Grad school is run totally different than undergrad. I feel like it's just more discussion based and less like test and assignment based. But that was something that I think was really helpful. Any other like undergrad classes that I can think of? The class that my digital marketing psychology class. So I did take our digital media psychology class. That's an option for undergrad students. You probably don't even have to be a psych major, maybe. Maybe you do, it might be upper div, but that was something that was super practical because that actually connected me with that internship like manager who's also a adjunct professor, Dr. Oles. So yeah, that was another super practical class, I think, but nothing like crazy. The other stuff I feel like was just like general knowledge.
Yeah.
A lot of other stuff you just learn kind of on the job too. So that's also a thing.
Yeah, learn the most by doing and stuff like that, and just going out there and engaging and things like, you know, BSBA, internships, jobs, you name it. Definitely seems like a great route. I would also offer as well to anyone out there looking for classes, develop some practical skills. I'm a senior and I just took Com 1 in the fall because I was basically already done with my major. And I saw on like the Bruin Walk, it's a class that forces you to just do a ton of public speaking. And while doing it, you're reading a cool textbook that talks not necessarily on like a deep psychology level, but it does kind of talk about, you know, how people are receptive to certain different things and things like empathy, emotional intelligence, other different things that you can learn about that can just help you as a leader and someone who's a part of a team and things like that. So that's definitely one that I would recommend. Looking at another question, Tanya is curious, did you ever encounter any problems when applying to sports related opportunities because of your focus in psychology and not in a field directly associated with sports?
Great question, Tanya. No, honestly, short answer, I never had problems when applying to sports related companies because I had a non-sports related major. I feel like that almost never goes against you, really. I think the biggest takeaway for you all is that like your major shouldn't be like, and even just like your curriculum itself, I think it can be an asset, but it's not like who you are. It's not necessarily explaining your passions or capabilities either. And so realizing that when you're interviewing for internships or just other opportunities, jobs, like they're not just looking at like, hey, what classes did you take? They want to know like what experiences are you immersed in? What are things that excite you and like why, and like kind of like maybe what's your story about it. That's something that's a little bit more compelling than just like, yeah, but I, took this marketing class. It's like, no, like I really, like understanding, like for me, for example, how psychology can directly relate to marketing is it gives you that like basic understanding and awareness of why people behave the way they do. That's something that's immediately or directly correlated to consumer behavior and marketing. Because if you understand the way people do, or if you understand the reason why people do what they do, you can thus market to them, you can market a product to them and understand why they like it, why they don't like it, who should be your direct audience to this, who should you cater this product to, and who's like, it would be kind of like it'd be wasteful to spend so much time catering this product to. So that's like, I guess, a pro tip for like psychology. I think that's something that's directly related to marketing there. But yeah, no, I don't think if you have a major that you're like, is this going to put me in a box for an interview? No, to Colin's point, unless maybe you're like pre-med or something like that. But I even see people make little pivots.
Engineer.
Yeah. So there's like some majors, but for the most part, like definitely don't feel like your major puts you into a box. And seek experiences outside of school. And that could even be like, clubs and BSBA and things like that. But just anything else. There's like, obviously like paid internships are great. Sometimes something starts unpaid. Like it's still transferable skill. You're still getting something from it. So just like finding that balance of being able to build yourself up outside of just your classes is good.
Yeah, I like that for sure. It definitely takes some pressure off of the whole, because I remember, when we're all younger, freshman, sophomore, like the whole choosing the major process, how stressful some of that can be. We were all once there, and we're here to tell you it's not as big of a deal as you think, unless, like Christina said, you're trying to become a doctor or an engineer. And even then, there are people who like study English as their undergrad and then become like MDs and things like that. So not to worry. One other thing I would offer as well too is like when in interviews and things like that, conveying like three main qualities of like being someone who works hard, is personable, and has a willingness to learn. I've had mentors tell me they'd much rather have someone who has those qualities be at their company, and they take 2 or 3 months to ramp them up to speed in that very given skill set or technical aspect that they're doing. Let's say it's at Nike and marketing or something like that, as opposed to the marketing major who's only ever done marketing but isn't all that friendly, or doesn't convey a great work ethic, or isn't really willing to learn. They'd rather spend an extra month or two for the long-term quality, like coworker and things like that, as opposed to someone who just happened to have like the perfect marketing alignment and things like that. So sorry for that little side note. I'll get back to it, but I just wanted to make sure people were aware of that. So Alana's curious, what was the recruitment process like at Nike and some of the other very large companies you mentioned recruiting at? And do you have any advice for people in recruiting at such popular roles? Like, how do you recommend making yourself stand out when there's undoubtedly hundreds upon hundreds of applicants? And if you want, we could address the first part, and then I could read the other ones to you as well.
Yeah, I could try to answer it in some. So for the first part, what was the recruitment process like at Nike? I guess for my full-time role was different. In the internship, full-time role was a lot more intense. I feel like I had to fit in like my athlete hat. I've kind of almost felt like I was a boxer in like a ring. I was like, oh my gosh, here's round 1, here's round 2, because there was like 6, like I said, 6 different interviews that I had like an hour. So it was like 6 hours, like with each person. Not all on the same day, but I remember there was like 4 back to back in like a day. I was like, oh my gosh. So then there was fatigue, and then I was like, I need to eat, I need to drink water, but I need to be on my game. So that was a lot. And I think it's kind of almost like a pressure test of like, can you handle, working under pressure like the sports world is. And the way you kind of prepare for something like that, because yeah, large companies and as I say, you can get great experience from companies that aren't like large companies too. And so definitely don't feel like there's like, I don't know, like there's like, I feel like a stereotype of like, oh, this company like Nike or something is better than this other company. Like you can get great marketing experience. I feel like a lot of companies, but Nike's pretty cool. But yeah, I think the way I prepared for that, knowing that the internship it was like, not like super, not the same level of intensity at all, but they still expected you as a company like Nike to have your stuff together. And by that, it doesn't mean you have to know everything. To Colin's point, like you don't have to have that marketing experience. I'm not going to ask you something like a professor would ask you. Like they're not going to like pop quiz you on anything like that. But something I think at least as students, and I always try to say this, no matter what the role is one, knowing your story really well. You know, having your quick, whether it be an elevator pitch or backgrounds, should be able to say it in 5 minutes, pretty easy. Just practice it. It's totally fine to practice it. Practice in the mirror. Practice it a few times. I always practice it. And so in that, usually for me, it started for a company like Nike, like, hey, I grew up in the sports world, the same way that I started this conversation. So I have that kind of on the back of my hand. I said a little spiel. It basically says, this is the reason why I'm interested in sports. It's a little bit about me to personalize it. This is why, you know, and then it leads to like, this is why I feel like I'm a good fit, or this is the reason why I'm interested in Nike. So a little bit about me, interested in Nike, that kind of being like the background. So I had that super tight, at least because they always ask you, whether it be an internship or professional or regular role, tell me a little bit about yourself, or like, you know, something like
Yeah.
that. So I always have that super tight. And then other than that, it's just being able to speak on your resume. Look at your resume and be able to say like, why does this fit, you know, the role? Look at the role, the job description or the internship experience and say like, hey, okay, this is something, a transferable skill that I have. Or like, oh, they said they want someone that's like, you know, things outside the box. Here's experiences that I have that show that. Coming prepared with that, coming prepared with questions. The last thing that I think is super important is seeing like maybe where you have ideas. Like it might not always be the best ideas, but like think of just like ideas of something like maybe the company that you're interviewing at, how they could do better. So if I'm interviewing for a Nike marketing job, I'm thinking of like, hey, how is Nike marketing interesting to me? How did it captivate me? What do I think they could actually do better? So I'm like, oh, maybe it could be like, oh, I think they could relate, you know, to the college student better, the college athlete better now that NIL is open. And this is how, because I'm a college student, I have like, you know, friends or whatever, close like peers who are in this space. Having ideas also is something that's impressive, regardless of whether you actually execute them or not. So a little bit about yourself, being super tight, clear, practice that, then having kind of some points for how you can speak over your resume, and then having ideas is always a great way to handle that. And that kind of answers, I think, Alana's last question too, for how you make yourself stand out. Is just being super clear and prepared for that, and sound like happy and passionate, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you also add maybe as well, because it's something I do, like the power of like being thoughtful, like following up the next morning with a thank you note and like a little tidbit of something specific you enjoyed or something like that? Like, do you
For
think that's stuff that could help make you stand out?
For sure. Always, always, always send the thank you. I remember one time I almost forgot. I think I forgot like to send it later that day, but then I remembered like the next day, or even like if it's 2 days later, but like it's never too late. Just send the thank you. Always send a thank you. Even if it's just email or something like that. Quick follow-up is like expected, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also just add too, if you see, like, if you know they're a Rams fan or something and the Rams just won the Super Bowl, maybe go email that connection or mentor right now, just saying like, hey, huge congrats on the game. Like, did you do anything fun to celebrate, or what did you think of it, or something like that? Looking at Emily's last question real quick, and we want to be respectful of your time, Christina, as well as our members. What skills would you recommend or suggest cultivating in order to succeed in a career in sports business / marketing?
Yeah, I think Colin, you kind of mentioned them earlier, of like being personable, like being able to speak to people. That doesn't necessarily mean maybe you're comfortable doing that now. Like that's totally fine if you're not, but it is something you'll have to do. You have to work with people. Though you want them to want to work with you too. So I think when it comes to like marketing, you have to like know how to market yourself. So that's something is definitely a good skill set. Whether you feel like you have a strong skill in that right now or not, either way, you should probably just continue to fine tune that. And that could be setting up with some like informationals or some one-on-ones with people on LinkedIn, and just like, you know, getting more comfortable with something like that. Other skills for cultivating a successful career. I'm like so early in my career, so it's definitely like I don't have it all figured out yet. But in order to succeed, just it's the same thing that would help you succeed in other areas of your life or other careers too, is the like wanting to learn, wanting to always know more, being very thoughtful, paying attention, and then trying to put pieces together. I know like one of the most annoying things about like UCLA tests sometimes are like the application of the information, but it's really true. Like I think in the real world, it's like you can't just like know something, you have to know why like that happens, or how does this connect, and just starting to have like practice that. I was like, oh, how does this connect with this, or like just like being kind of more thoughtful about, things that are happening now, and like saying like, oh, maybe how can this affect the future NFTs? I don't know. It can be a whole nother thing, but it's just being mindful of like how things connect is a great skill set.
Yeah, sounds like being a lifelong learner. That stuff pays off and all that. And also, I would assume like part of being personable is being a good listener as well, huh?
For sure, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was already the final two questions would just be the first one, if you could speak like real quick, what it was like speaking in front of the United States Senate. And then our final one would just be any parting advice or anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, Senate thing was super cool last year. I did get to speak in front of the Senate, for those that don't know, but it was like the week after I graduated, a week before I started Nike. And I like flew out to DC, was asked to speak in front of the Senate about NIL, name, image, and likeness for college athletes, since that wasn't a policy in place yet, and now is. College athletes can, as you guys maybe have seen on like social media or Instagram, like they're like tagging at least other companies, not getting paid quite yet, but at least tagging other companies, which I think is nice because college athletes couldn't do things that other college students could do. And so that's, I think, really great. The experience was super awesome. It kind of tied a bow into my college like athlete activism. That was something I was super passionate about. It was like, hey, why don't college athletes get like all of our time is consumed with this and this, but like we should be able to like really get all the value, that UCLA offers too. And so yeah, it was such a like bow experience. It was pretty crazy. It wasn't like too nerve-wracking. It was super fun. So yeah, that was like super awesome. And then I think your last question was, what is something to give everyone to take away with?
Yeah.
I think just like, networking. I always said that, even when for those who are in eBoard, I always said that when I was here. It's the reason why I created the club. Getting
Yeah.
involved, looking at transferable skills. Like, hey, like that's the biggest thing. It's not like, hey, I want to work for Nike. It's like, hey, how can I work for Nike, or how can I work for Netflix, or whatever company you aspire, NBA? Like, what are the skills that I need to acquire? And then how do I go get those skills? And so just being attentive there, knowing that you guys have a lot of opportunity, people want to help you as a college student, as a UCLA student. Alumni are super receptive on LinkedIn too. So I think those are my biggest takeaways, but just also, make sure you have some balance in your life too in college, which I feel like most people naturally have just by the way college setting is, but make sure you just enjoy that, while still having like, that end goal in mind. So I'll leave you guys with that.
Most definitely. Well, liked all of it, networking, transferable skills, achieving balance. That sounds like a great deal right there. And Christina, I just want to say you're leading by such great example, and we really appreciate that, especially because like this club wouldn't even be here if it weren't for you and your idea to do it. And then also spending a couple of years to help like really build it up to get it to where it is today. So like from the bottom of my heart and all our hearts, like thank you so much. We wish you all the best, and like love staying in touch, and we'll do some more of these with you.
Of course. Well, awesome. So nice to like meet you all. If you have any follow-up questions, just shoot them my way or Colin's way, and he can connect.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Well, thanks so much, and safe travels. All right.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna hop so I can travel. Bye.
All
Have
right.
a good one, you guys.
All right. See you later. All right. And for the rest of us, real quick, we're just going to go over some announcements. Thanks again for joining this call tonight. We really appreciate it. Our next play is actually literally like right as we were about to get into this meeting. We got confirmed we get to be back in person next Wednesday. For whoever would like to join, we'll be over at Bunch 3170, hosting guest speaker Caitlin Mulcahy, who's a freelance photographer. She's a University of Michigan alum, and she's also done photography for the NFL, NBA, and also she mentioned as well Getty Images, which is pretty cool. So that's next Wednesday at 6. in bunch 3170, but it'll also be simultaneously simulcast on Zoom at the same time in case you're not comfortable coming in person. Quick last reminder as well, you guys have heard about this probably plenty of times. You've been coming to our meetings. We got the cool opportunity to go attend the Pulse conference over at the Anderson School. It'll be hosted in Luskin, but you can also attend virtually. That's a week and a half from now on Friday, February 25th. And I believe actually if you've registered, and we'll add this to it, there's also some stuff going on that Thursday night of the 24th. And there are some really cool speakers. There's going to be a top executive from Netflix, a CEO of a company that is closely tied with LeBron James because they were childhood friends and things like that, a rapper from Wu-Tang Clan. So a whole bunch of cool opportunities to get to hear from some really special individuals. Quick reminder of our attendance policy. You guys kind of know it by now. It's a merit-based point system. Those of you who have been crushing it this quarter, we look forward to having you on our SoFi tour with us. But yeah, overall, really appreciate you guys coming tonight. And I also want to share as well, that's Christina just to the left of that flame. That's the LA84 campus right there. And that flame, fun fact, has been going strong for the last 38 plus years, ever since 1984. And there's some of us right there as well, like Johnny, our treasurer, myself, Nick Kahn, as well as some other former leaders of our club. So once again, thank you so much for joining tonight, guys, and hope you have a great rest of your week 6.